Hello YouTube, welcome to the garage. During the 2007 Toyota Camry rescue project, when I came to the part where I had to refill the transmission, in my research of how to actually do that without taking it to the dealer or spending thousands of dollars on the equipment they say is required, obviously I had a lot of questions when I started my research, and I answered a lot of them, but I still have some questions, and I wanted to share my thought process with everybody and what I went through as I was studying this, because there's a lot of people out there a lot smarter than I am, and so I want to show what I figured out, and if anybody has any better ideas, please by all means put it in the comments so we can all kind of benefit from this. But I want to go over from the beginning how TSPs show how to do it. And when I was doing my research, I saw that there was two different ways to do it. One was when you had to measure it during the process of the transmission warming up. Okay, transmission fluid expands as it gets hotter, and the original, I found the TSB for the original procedure where you're measuring it as it's warming up. Okay, and I saw different videos where people use like infrared thermometers. They just used a thermometer to check the fluid that was dripping out of the transmission. But the procedure according to the TSB, you use a scan tool. Okay, there's called a tech stream. That's their proprietary one. But there's, I personally think if you're going to do it that way, you need to measure it using the sensor inside the transmission itself. And there's, dongles. Top Don has their top scan. This is the pro version, and it's only available on their website, and I checked, and it's right now it's not available. You can get the top scan light, and it'll do it, and it's about $100 for that, but it's about $50 a year for the subscription for that. ThinkCar has the ThinkDiag 2, which is about $130, and it's at least $100 a year to keep this thing going. But Xtool has their 830M. It's $175 to buy it, but this is lifetime updates. You never have to spend anything on it for the DIYer. This is just my opinion. This is the one to have. And I said $175. I keep this in the glove box of my car, and you run it off your phone. But that's just my opinion. But in order to measure the temperatures in this, I fully believe you need to use some sort of a scan tool to check the temperatures as it's warming up. And also, they say there's a special, right here, a special, a transmission fill system. Okay, this is mine. Worked perfectly. Okay, and then, as you go through the TSB, it talks about how you have to use the tool to measure it, and where to fill it. I covered this in that other video of how to fill it. And what you're doing is you're monitoring the fluid temperature as it is warming up. Okay, they tell you have to start the engine, run the shifter through park, reverse, neutral, drive back and forth to make sure everything is full. Okay, and then once you do that, you're monitoring the temperature, and what you want is when you get between 104 and 113 degrees, if there's just a little bit of fluid dripping out of the drain plug, then it's full. If there's nothing coming out, there's not enough fluid in it, and the thing's already up to the temperature required, you're going to have to shut it down, let it cool down, add some more fluid, and go through this process again. Okay, but I mean, it's doable, and it shows the process here. Okay, as the fluid's warming up, it's got this little overflow tube. Looks just like this. Okay, because I bought one of these, about $4, but this overflow tube is in there, and it's the right length for when it's between 104 and 113 degrees. There's just a little bit of fluid to be seeping over top of this and dripping out of the drain plug. Okay, that's the level they want it. as the fluid warms up, this level is going to keep getting higher and fluid is going to keep coming out of here. So like I said, you want to have, fluid dripping out of this, out of the bottom, obviously, just slightly between 104 and 113. Then you put the plug back in the bottom and you're done. Okay, but you need to have some way to accurately measure the temperature of the fluid, and I personally think that using some sort of a scan tool is the best way to do it. Just my humble opinion. Okay, once you get to where it's just dripping out here slowly, you put the plug back in the bottom, and then you put the plug back in the fill hole. Okay, and you're done. So that was the first incarnation of how to measure the fluid. But one of the questions I had and was thinking about was, this transmission, the transmission is the 6-speed automatic. They're made by Aisin, okay? And this procedure, it's under a service bulletin, but who develops this procedure? Is it Aisin? Does Toyota have some input in it? I have no idea. Okay, but this was the procedure they were using. So this is dated of 2007. Okay, and then they changed the procedure. Okay, that's where this 12-page bulletin came from. This is in February of 2013. Again, who develops this procedure for how to fill it? Is it Aisin who actually produces the transmission, or does Toyota design the transmission and give the plans to Aisin and they make it? Or is it an Aisin transmission design? I don't know. Okay, so maybe someone out there knows how this works. If Toyota designs a transmission, do they, send those designs into the company Aisin that builds transmissions? I don't know, because I have a Saab, a 2006 Saab 9.3, which is actually it's a Chevy. General Motors bought out Saab, and it's got an Aisin 5-speed transmission in it. So did General Motors design that transmission and send the plans into Aisin and have them build it, or did Aisin design it and GM have some input? I don't know. There's a lot of different cars that use Aisin, different manufacturers that use Aisin, and I don't know if each manufacturer designs a transmission and sends it to them just to have them make it, or if Aisin, designs their own transmissions and modifies them to fit, the different manufacturers, drivetrain configuration. I don't know. But as far as, this they come up with this technical service bulletin about, and this supersedes the original one, okay? This is 2013, this was dated 2007. So, okay, this supersedes the former one, okay, the older one. All right, so why? If this procedure was working, why did they change it to this? I have no idea. Maybe someone knows why they would do that. Was it because this procedure turned out there was too many inaccuracies with it? Because I personally would think that you would want to measure the level when it's at operating temperature, not when it's on its way to operating temperature. I'd think there'd be too many variables. So were they having problems with these being underfilled, and having cavitation, problems with that, destroying the transmission because there wasn't enough fluid in it? That's a possibility, but I don't know. And then, did Aisin, change the procedure, or was this a Toyota change? Again, I don't know. But it was changed nonetheless. And as I was doing my research, they said, that's the original way you would fill it. You warm it up between 104 and 113. If you had a little bit of, just a little bit of fluid dripping out of the tube, out the drain, then you put the plug in and you were good. It was according to the bulletin, it was full. Okay, on to the 12-page procedure with all kinds of fancy equipment you need to buy. All right. And so on this one, this is the one where you also need to have some sort of a scanner to read the temperature, and talk about the tools and equipment required. I covered this in that other video, but I'll just kind of briefly, this tube here attached to the drain hole, the fill hole, okay, and the side of the transmission on the left front behind the left front wheel. Okay, then there was a vacuum. I want to make sure I'm in frame here. There was this vacuum gauge that hooked to that hose that goes into the fill hole. All right, and then there was a vacuum canister. This is where you hook your shop air and you turn the shop air on, which creates the Venturi effect and draws this into vacuum. It had to be 2 to 5 inches of water vacuum being able to pull on the system. Okay, and then underneath it, you know, it's showing the little drain plug right there, and you had to take that out under vacuum. Then you put in this adjustable straw. Okay, so and out of that, this little rubber tube here, when you were, you know, at operating temperature, at operating idle speed, you know, if you just had a little bit of fluid dripping out of here, it was full. But in order to get this out of here, because if you just unscrewed that, the fluid would run out. And so in order to get this out, you had to draw the whole system into a vacuum. When you draw it into a vacuum, you could pull this out and put the plug back in, and you were done. Okay, well, you know, when I was doing my research, you know, and as far as that adjustable straw, depending on the temperature and RPM, you know, it tells you what setting to set that straw at to know if it's full. Okay, and some people probably noticed that the way I adjusted, you know, the straw that I made, my you know, out of that silicone tubing, I set it at 75.5 millimeters, and the car was actually idling about 730. So you know, according to this TSB, I should have made that straw about 72 millimeters long. But in my humble opinion, you know, that small of a difference makes absolutely no difference. Oh, I forgot. In the original TSB, how to adjust it, once you had it where it was just dripping out of the pan at you know, between 104 and 113 degrees, you know, when it was doing that, you know, if you had it where it was just barely dripping, you put the plug in, then you added 200 milliliters more fluid to it. Okay, through the you know, the fill hole. Okay, I forgot that in the original one, once you have it where it's dripping out, you know, just slightly dripping between 104 and 113 degrees, put the plug back in, then you add 200 milliliters more of fluid through the fill hole, the fill plug. Okay, forgot about that. All right, so back to this, where, you know, I said the car I was working on, you know, is idling, you know, about 730. Okay, so according to this TSB, it should have been 72 millimeters. But I personally would rather have it a little high than a little low. And on here where it was, you know, the original one, let me get that. Just a visual. It's easier for me to try and explain it because of how the thing is measured. There you go. Okay, you have this fluid, you know, and you see it's got waves and stuff. It isn't just completely static like a lake or pond with no wind or no movement. You know, it's not just smooth as glass. You've got these waves, and you've got a vehicle that's moving down the road, inclines left, right. You know, this stuff is sloshing all around. So when they're saying, you know, 75.5 millimeters, you know, that accurate, really? There's no way that, you know, if it's like 75.0, that's a problem, you know. And again, so, you know, according to the, you know, this information here on the vehicle that I was doing, it should have been 72 millimeters long. But again, I would rather err on the side of caution, have just a little bit more fluid in there. And that, as far as the difference between 72 millimeters and 75.5 is negligible, because you have to have some sort of a leeway for the fluid sloshing around in there. So, you know, I can't see where that would make make an issue. But again, there's a lot of people out there a lot smarter than I am. If this is a problem, please, notate it in the comments. And so that's why how I figured out I could make an extension on that straw, okay, to up to 75 millimeters, and that's when I measured it with my little tool here. In that other video I showed how I measured it. Okay, so but all of that, I mean, being said, as far as the measure it, if the vehicle is at operating temperature, so if you change, you added an extension to this, like I did with a piece of silicone tubing. If you at 75.5 millimeters, and you put that on there, and just with the engine idling, whatever its curb idle is, as long as it's in the normal range, and the car is not overheating, the temperature and the RPM and everything is normal, just normal, just sitting there idling, and you have this at 75.5, and the fluid is just barely dripping out of there, it's going to be correct. And you don't need a scan tool, you don't need to draw it into a vacuum. With this with the extension on here, it's going to be right, because it has to be. But I had questions about this. This will work in this car, drives flawlessly, shifts perfectly, so I know that this is right. Okay, but the questions that I had, and I'm sure other people have, is, okay, you can take that drain plug out and you can pull this out and it will drain the fluid, but it won't drain all of it because it kind of sits up on a pedestal. I don't know if you can see this. Okay, this is a picture of this straw in the bottom of the pan. Okay, and this has got a raised area here, and it's a rolled over edge, so when you screw this in, that edge comes up against the top of that little fixture stand up. So there's still going to be fluid in here. And so when you take the pan off, fluid will run out. Well, for decades, I'm an old guy and I've been doing wrenching for a long time. For decades, there was no drain in any automatic transmission. You just loosened the bolts and let it down slowly, and drain the fluid out that way. Okay, well, the problem I had with with me putting a hose on here, that extension on here, is this will unscrew, and if somebody from underneath takes the plug out and unscrews this, well, that hose is going to fall off. Okay, and then the customer on this car knows that I did this modification, so everybody knows the deal. But if someone were to just take the plug out, take this out, and then drain the fluid, without maybe taking this off or not even putting that back on, then they'd be back to square one. You would need to have all that equipment to measure this, and unless they put that hose back on there, and and again, you would have to know why it was there and what its purpose. So that's the only real issue that I had with the design that I came up with. Okay, and as it is, I would just, without draining it that way, I would just take the pan down and drain it, just not even mess with this anymore, like they used to be in the old days, I guess you could say. But I was trying to, kind of a perfectionist, I was trying to figure out what I could do, to lengthen this straw to where you could take it out and then put it back in without, things falling off. I was, kind of under the gun, and I need, running against the clock. I had to get this car done. So what I did, obviously will work, but like I said, to me, it's not perfect. I would like to figure out a way to extend this and still be able to remove it. Okay, but I want something that's going to be robust enough to, not fall off inside the transmission, with temperatures and that kind of stuff. The silicone tubing is going to be fine. It won't melt or anything like that. But like I said, that was a question I had. What can I do? How can I extend this in a way where it will, function as it originally did, with being able to take this out and then screw it back in without, you know, a little rubber hose falling off inside. And that's my dilemma. You know, I figured out how to make it work, and and you don't need all that equipment. You know, as long as the thing is idling at curb idle, it's at normal operating temperature. The fans are cycling on and off. It's going to be the right temperature. And you know, if you said do the modification where you extend this to the 75.5, let's say you won't need any kind of scan tool or fancy vacuum equipment, stuff like that. If you have it to where the fluid is just barely dripping out of here at curb idle at normal operating temperature, it's going to be right. Just put everything, the plugs back in, and you're good to go. You don't need any fancy equipment. All you need to do is make the modification to this straw, make it a little bit longer. But again, like I said, the thing I was trying to figure out, how can I do it where it's not just a straw that if someone takes this out, it'll fall off. So that, and I'm sure there's other people that have figured that out already. But so I'm just trying to, I would like some input. I wasn't sure, it's like, I'll show you some measurements here on the thing. Can you see that? 11/30 seconds, or 8.67 millimeters. There we go. 0.3410 inches. And then as far as the inside diameter, I want to make sure you guys can see this. And there we go, in millimeters. Alright, so I'm not sure if I could get a piece of copper tubing and swedge it so it'll just barely fit in there. I don't know. I'm still working on it, but that was a question I had. It's like, how can I make this to where it'll function like the normal design, where you can remove this and put it back in without any extensions falling off. And then if someone did want to measure it, I'm not sure why they would do it, but if someone wanted to stick that little measuring tool in there, it would still fit. But I don't think anybody would ever do that. So as far as the only question I really had was, how can I extend this to where it will function as it was normally designed, where you can take this out and put it back in. During my research, I watched a lot of different videos on how to fill this transmission and measure it correctly. And the one video that I watched where I really understood exactly how this procedure works was the video I watched on the Weber Auto channel. The gentleman, I can't remember his name, who is the transmission instructor at that tech school, is a phenomenal resource. I've watched his videos and learned a lot about transmissions from him, and he does it all from a wheelchair. The guy is amazing. And he was explaining exactly in great detail how this 12-page bulletin describes the procedure. And being a tech school, he had access, he had all of the expensive equipment, everything, the vacuum canister, the fill canister, the adjustable straw. He had the whole thing, and he showed exactly how it worked, and he did it so well that when I was watching, when he pulled it into a vacuum in order to take that adjustable straw out, that's when I had the revelation that that's the only reason you need to pull that into vacuum, is to get that straw out of there with the correct level of fluid inside. And as I said, it's the Weber Auto channel, and it's easy to find. So if you want to kind of check my work and watch that video, I said that's where I realized that if the car is operating normally, it's going to be at the correct operating temperature, right in the the proper window. Here it says 185 to 194, and then the idle speed. And again, I opted to go for a little longer on the straw to have a little more fluid in it, as opposed to I said the car I worked on, it idled about 730. So the 72 millimeter would have been the correct length, but I did the 75.5. Again, I would like to have a little extra fluid in there, and like I said, it dries perfectly. It's not blowing fluid out all over the place. But that's the video where I really figured out and realized the only reason you have to pull that into a vacuum is because you have to take that removable adjustable straw out and just put the the drain plug back in it. So that's why I say if the straw they put in it was the right length, you wouldn't have to do any of that. Just bring it up to temperature, at idle RPM, take the plug out. If it's just dripping a little bit, put the plug back in. If it's too full, obviously the excess will run out. If nothing comes out, just add fluid until it comes out. So like I said, if you want to check out the Weber Auto channel and the video that I used to figure this out, and double check me. If you find anything that's different with that, please let me know in the comments. All right, well, so there's just some thoughts I had, and on this procedure, and again, I'd like some input from all you people out there know a lot more than I do, and share it with all of us. So, and until then, the deal, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.